Good evening, Danvers. Good afternoon, whatever time you're watching this. Welcome to the topics of the town. We look like we're squashed a little bit on our moon vision there, but bear with us. We have John Toomey with us tonight, and we're hosting the topics of the town news. We try to be very transparent, and independent reporting is our motto. The topics of the town news reporting is direct and comprehensive. We don't miss a lot of words. We present it as we see it. We will always report only the truth, sometimes with our own opinion included. And that happens all the time. So, this being April 11th, we're about a month away from town elections, but we're also about 6 weeks away from town meeting, who is going to put us into debt with all the spending that's happening with the budget.
Well, that's typical.
That's typical, and what we have is, to date, warrant articles are not yet available. They're being developed, being prepared, and we're waiting for the surprises that we may see in those warrant articles. But as of today, they have not been presented to the town, to the Board of Selectmen. Town manager budget has been presented to the selectmen, and I recall that I'm calling it correctly, the town manager budget. Basically is presented to the selectmen, and the selectmen have decided to forward it to the finance committee. And as a matter of fact, last night was the first time I had enough urgency to go to the finance committee meeting. And it turned out to be a real doorbuster. Basically, it was mostly related to the education of our students, whether they're from the Essex North Shore Vocational School, Danvers school system, or from any other source that we have education costs. The other item was the library, because library in its own way is doing education. So, not to belabor the situation, what I'd like to do is report very briefly the library and the library trustees, led by Alex Lent, our library director, did a tremendous presentation. Their budget went up just over 2%. The plan was laid out. We should look forward to new digs in different floors of the library. The archival center is getting its new fire protection system, which is gas basically instead of water because of the damage to the books. And also, there was a brief discussion last night in regard to the succession of the archivist. Because Dick is almost our age, John, and he's probably younger than we are, but he has been throughout the whole last, I think, 25 or 30 years. He's been the archivist.
He's been there for a long time.
And he's done a tremendous job.
Yes.
So he has to hand that over to somebody, so they'll be doing some transitions to couple of individuals that have been identified as archivists. So they have professionals in the library. Dick will be around for as long as he wants to be, I believe, but at least they understand that something has to happen. So,
well, the Archivist Center and the library are two functions in Danvers, I think, that really are doing very well.
They're unique. And they're very comprehensive, because Dick makes sure that anybody has any questions, he has the answers.
Yes.
So, and he'll develop the answers for you. The second item on the agenda for the Finance Committee last night, and the Finance Committee I left at 11 o'clock, and they still had police and fire after that, so I don't know, they must have gone till 1 o'clock in the morning. Essex Vocational School, which is Essex North Shore Vocational School, and we had a great presentation, and the superintendent from the school, Heidi Riccio, and our friend, Mr. Marquis, was there to present the budget to the town of Danvers, Wayne being the school committee candidate or school committee member representing Danvers. So what has the school itself is finally done. It's been in place 4 to 5 years now. They have 1,400 students, roughly 1,400 students, from 17 member communities and 35 surrounding communities. And they have 25 different programs that these students participate in. And it includes 8 agricultural programs, construction, craft laborers, and architectural mechanics. And everybody's hung up on this STEM education. And that is basically leading towards an engineering background, construction, research in many cases. But she did an excellent job in presenting the budget, which did go up. It went up to, we have 160 students, I believe, and the tuition or the funds that the town has to pay for those students is about $16.7 thousand a year. So they're higher than the normal education in the towns, but they provide such a variety. And the one question that was asked that was not really answered is how many of the students that go to the vocational school really go on to a 2-year or 4-year college. Was very hesitant about the numbers. We will follow up on that because, as I told you earlier, Heidi was very interested in us doing a documentary similar to what we've done with the library and some of the other facilities in town. The one big item that was included in the budget is the administrative costs. That was discussed. And one of the major bones of contention was brought up by the Finance Committee of why can the students from North Shore Voc or Essex North Shore Voc attend Danvers school system, basically, which would be already included in our tax base.
But that's an entirely different educational system, isn't it?
And that's exactly what was the point that was being made, is that the focus of the vocational school is more towards the craft type labor, more of the technical type labor, nursing programs, and beauticians. They do all kinds of different things. So no wonder that the magnet for that school are the programs that they offer. The one thing that we noticed, and you even brought this up to me, is I don't know if everybody's seen this article, but Salem Evening News ran "No room in the Voc." Well, yes.
Let me just throw this in. read the bloody paper and find out what's going on. That's what you should be doing, all of you.
The paper was very focused on one subject, and I know where it's coming from. They want to present the case for Voc to be expanded, which originally I was on the initial planning committee for the Essex Aggie, North Shore Vocational, and then all of a sudden Peabody came into the vocational program. And Peter Turigian and I sat there with Wayne and we discussed how this was all going to come together and for what size. At that time, that was the size that it was decided to be. Now, maybe in the future there is room for expansion, and we should be able to expand because there's about 127 acres of land over there, but there's also the old Essex Aggie buildings that are across the street on Route 62. And they can be renovated and used as classrooms, similar to what they have been done in the past. So the presentation was very well done, and the definition of the school was well defined. The superintendent did an excellent job in presenting the information. We are stuck with the bill because that is proportional as an allocation to each student, and tuitions vary from different cities and towns due to the socioeconomic status.
But it's a very popular school that people want to send their children to.
It is, and the thing is that there's a lot of transportation costs because they provide the bus service to get those kids into our area. And 1,400, I asked the question of the superintendent, are all of the positions right now filled? She said no, because there are variations between classes and between years of what do they go, freshman, sophomore, senior, junior, and senior. So they have 4 grades basically, and those grades change every year because somebody is going to leave, they're going to go out of state, they're going to do something different. So right now, I think the article was a little bit premature. It was self-advertising, but we do need vocational education, and that's something that we should be looking forward to. We're maybe doing a documentary about North Shore, Essex North Shore Vocational School in the future. So that's the 2 easy items. Then the Finance Committee went into a presentation by the Danvers education program, by the education system, our school committee. Our school committee made a presentation and basically said that our budget for next year, that's controlled by the school committee, is $42,397,000, 2.98%, 3% increase from the previous year. But the previous year's increases varied from 3, 4, and even up to almost 5%, and they came with an average of all those 10 years of 3.12. So they're within that range. However, there was a very interesting discussion that followed by town meeting members, former school committee members, and former teachers and educators. There seems to be some discontent in regard to the MCAS scores. We, as a town, school committee, and the school administration have set low levels, or they're satisfied with low level of performance. However, I think what I heard and I'm reporting from what I heard, I did not participate in this discussion, is that the students are allowed to reach this low level of performance because that is the performance level that is being used to evaluate the administration and the teachers. So I don't know if that's right or wrong. I'm not a school expert. However, there was a well promoted and well presented discussion in regard to the surrounding communities of Danvers that put Danvers in one case 8th out of 9 statistical information guidelines. It presented a bad view of the education. We're not challenging our students to the level that they should be challenged. There was a lot of discussion that 70% of the students go to, or 90% in Danvers, on to college, but nobody can answer whether after the first year, whether they stayed or not.
Yes.
So I was tempted to discuss my own situation where I noticed in the last 10 years is that students that come out of public schools, it doesn't matter whether it's Danvers or any other community, basically spend the first year repeating the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic. That's what it comes down to. And they spend a whole year in the first year of college repeating that to establish some kind of a basic knowledge. At $50,000 to $70,000 a year for sending a student from a high school where it costs $16,000 or $17,000 a year to a college, and the colleges are complaining about that too because they don't have any students that are qualified to really enter. So that was the big bone of contention last night, and that lasted for over an hour and a half. So this Finance Committee meeting will be presented on DCAT, repeated. So if you are interested, you're welcome to review that meeting because it was good to hear that people are finally getting concerned about the quality of education.
Well, that's what I understand, is that people really are just beginning to realize that we could do a lot better, we should be doing a lot better, and we should be sending our kids on to further education. But to do that, we have to educate them better.
Well, the reason I'm even, and I'm glad this came in at the same time, is that I have been watching the newspaper in regard to what's going on in Peabody, Beverly, and Marblehead, and Salem. There's some discontent going on around, and our students are not getting the quality of education that they deserve because we, as the adults, school committee and the administration, are looking for an easy way out in being graded on their performance, on the administration's performance, not on the students' performance. They're willing to accept mediocrity. And that's what was one of the messages last night, is that we are willing to accept mediocrity, and that is not the right thing to do. So, one of the questions last night that was not clearly answered is, what is the total cost of our education in this town? There's 3 components to the cost of education in this town. The $43 million school committee administered budget, that's what they have control over, $43 million directly. Then they have another 16 to 20 million dollars of DPW and town responsibility for maintenance, operations, grass cutting, and everything else for the schools. And that's for grammar schools, middle school, and high school. So we're talking about $60 million right there. Plus, the one thing that they overlook is debt service. We have just spent millions, over $24-25 million for the high school. That is tax related. The grammar schools were renovated in the past. So all of those costs add up to over $70 million a year, and nobody even blinks an eye. So I am encouraged that at least some residents and some concerned citizens are raising the issue about what are we getting for the $70 million? Now, it's clear that something is wrong, but we need to figure out what it is. So there was a proposal that was made to the Finance Committee last night, and this was being pushed by the Finance Committee, so they asked, Jack Billings made the presentation. He's a former school committee official, and he's a resident, long-term resident, and he's an administrator in other schools, retired now. He was pressing him for, what do you want us to do? Maybe the discussion that took place last night should have taken at the selectmen's meeting or at the school committee meeting, because people have concerns, but they're afraid to go before the elected boards because they feel like it's like talking to the wall. People are afraid to go and present their cases. In Andrea Daly's case, she basically said that she was there with the school committee in October, presented the same situation, didn't go anywhere. So she did it again last night. It didn't go anywhere. Finance committee can't do anything about it. This is a policy by the school board and the Board of Selectmen, because they have that responsibility. So the budget was ultimately passed, and the Finance Committee pushed it on to town meeting. So we will probably have a motion on town meeting floor of a reduction of the school budget of at least $1 million, which will be requested to be placed in a reserve that either the Finance Committee or the school committee, no, the Finance Committee or town meeting can release, but only after a detailed plan of how to improve and assure the residents of increasing the capabilities of our students. So basically increasing the MCAS scores. So that's the end of that one. I have a lot of other notes. I sat there like a reporter last night writing these things down because I didn't want to interfere. I was glad to see that there are other people that are concerned, not just us.
How about the voters?
Well, that's the thing. Going into the voting booth, town elections. We have town elections that will be held on May 7th. And you want to run your clip?
Well, you
Clip
want to
one.
run one, and
You've got a point. It's a lot more accurate than polling stations. Anger distribution station.
vote here.
That's where the concerns, and I don't want to call it anger, but concerns are going to be expressed. However,
Okay,
now, our planned election forum for tonight, which we were planning for last 2 months,
Yes.
it fizzled because our Board of Selectmen has no opposition. David Mills and Dan Bennett have no opposition. Nobody wanted to run against them.
School committee.
School committee is Arthur Skarmas. He's got no opposition. And most of the activity that's going to happen at the elections is library trustees. Housing doesn't have any, housing authority has no opposition, and the town meeting members. So we'll talk about town meeting in a moment, but I have stressed the availability of our candidates for office because I've been there, I've done it. You have to make yourself available because people do have questions. So what I've called this an election, but a non-election. Due to lack of interest, John extended an invitation to each candidate without a serious reply. Therefore, there's apathy and lack of interest of our major candidates in Danvers. They're dumb, fat, and happy.
Well, there's a lack of interest on the voters too. I mean, what do we get? We get 1/4 or 1/3 of the actual voters turning out at an election. I mean, that's
If you get
ridiculous.
5 to 6% this time, that's going to be high. And it's usually town elections run between 8 and 10%. So we're talking about 2,000 people, and that's a high number. And this one doesn't have any opposition at all. So either everybody in town is so happy and relies on the existing Board of Selectmen and the school committee, or they just don't care. And the problem is that just don't care is what bothers a lot of people.
Well, it boils down to a very small group of people run the town, and they're spending your money.
And we've been saying that for years now, is that there's probably 200 individuals that manipulate what's going on in town. And it's not the town manager, and it's not the Board of Selectmen, it's the outside influence that runs this town. And the Board of Selectmen, all they're concerned about is liquor licenses. So, quickly, if I may, I have the ballots, and I was able to get the ballots for each precinct. And we have 6 candidates for 6 positions on Precinct 1, which is for the town meeting, which is great. We have 4 candidates for 6 positions in Precinct 2, which means that there's already one candidate here for a 2-year term that somebody left. So we're going to be lacking candidates. So write-ins do work.
Yeah.
Write-ins do work. Please make sure you follow the rules because they'll disqualify you if you don't. Precinct 3, 6 candidates for 6 positions on town meeting. There's one example, Precinct 4, which has 9 candidates for 6 positions. So this will be a race. Richard Bulldog, Priscilla Curda, well-known names, Mark Jones, John Zavalia, Alice Marie Campbell, Laurent Perrault, Bradley Carroll, William Graham, and Elizabeth Clem, another well-known name. 9 candidates for 6 positions.
Yay.
Congratulations, Precinct 4. At least you have some interest. Precinct 5. It says 8 candidates for 6 positions. And Dana Michael Hagan, Elizabeth Lapointe, Sharon McManus, Richard Betancourt, Antonio Betancourt. Wow, Betancourts are turning out. Daniel Gagnon, Charles Dame, and Matthew Byrne. So there is some interest. Precinct 6, 6 for 6. So that's one that's good. Precinct 7, my own precinct, there's only 5 candidates for 6 positions. So remember, if you want to become a town meeting member, make sure you have your neighbors write in your name and address so you can be elected, because later on it's going to be done separately in a classroom someplace, and that's not a good way of doing it. So there's 5 positions, candidates for 6 positions. Precinct 8 came through, 6 for 6. So those are well-known names. I know most of them. And so the elections are going to be very interesting to see what happens this year.
Can we just run 3?
Clip 2 and 3. 2 first. Now here's our Board of Selectmen, right, John?
Yep.
And they have no worries. They have already been re-elected. What would you like to say about this glorious picture?
Well, what you see is what you're going to get.
There you go. That's a good point. Next clip. Okay, here's the one for the town elections. There is no early voting at this town election. So this is a picture of the early voting at Town Hall.
Yes.
But the voting will take place at the high school, and it'll be on May 7th. Okay, get out and vote. That's the important part. Ballots, update of candidates for town meeting. We already went through that. Lack of candidates and interest. We've identified all that. This election season has much voter apathy and will have a small turnout. Town meeting members, candidates will make up the interest, and even there are a lack of candidates for vacancies. So please, if you're interested in joining the town meeting, write in. It takes, I believe, 10 write-ins to get your name through and be elected. Comment from the peanut gallery. I'll be the peanut gallery. One of the things that I have noticed, and I've been with town meeting, Board of Selectmen, Finance Committee, town meeting before that, is that there is a lack of interest now. And it's been on and off every few years. However, one of the issues that I see is that the town meeting basically becomes a rubber stamp for everything that is being presented to them by Town Hall. Finance Committee rubber stamps what the selectmen give them. Town meeting rubber stamps what the Finance Committee gives them, which is the same thing. And there's very little discussion on the floor of the town meeting.
Well, but one of the main reasons is because so many people don't vote that we wind up with the same people over and over and over again, and they're running it according to what they think is the best way.
You're talking 13 to 16 years in some cases for the Board of Selectmen.
And
that's a long time.
What you really need is competition. You need discussion. You need people who disagree with each other so that we can have some discussions to find out what's going on. And that's what we need.
Okay. John, you mentioned that you want to talk about the senior center survey. We can start that now.
Well, we covered the Danvers Council on Aging is coming up with over the next 7 weeks, and they want to do a survey. And this is coming from the World Health Organization, which is pushing the various reasons why residential areas especially, but communities should grow. And they have pushed through housing, various types of housing, participation in local governments, and transportation. And we've more or less covered the participation part of this thing, where we hope people will get more involved. And well, I'll bring up the next item, transportation.
Yeah.
Can you run
Clip 5. There we go.
I wonder how many people in town really have seen this. This is basically down at the Liberty Tree Mall, and this is the transportation bit. But it's amazing how little transportation, how little overall area transportation we have, public transportation. Think of how if we could eliminate all of these cars and so forth by providing public transportation. There's talk, the MBTA, there's talk of creating system that would more or less coordinate transportation between Danvers, Peabody, Beverly, Salem, and Boston. And doing the various research that has been going on, I'm rather surprised in reading some of this stuff at how many people here in Danvers actually work in various communities all the way to Boston. I mean, that's one of the reasons there's so much traffic on 128, Route 1, and 114, 95, 93. I mean, it's god-awful. But it would be reduced quite a bit if we had public transportation. So keep your fingers crossed and get out and talk to some of your reps. Talk to Teddy Spiliotis. See what's going on. Next.
Well, I need to comment on this one because
Okay.
I've spent an hour every day going out and coming back, commuting on 128, and it is a sad set of affairs, but we need to understand that the employment opportunities in the town of Danvers are not the same as outside of Boston, inside of Boston, and in the vicinity. So first things first, what we have to do is provide opportunities for business to come into Danvers or into Beverly or into Peabody, closer to our commuting distance. I used to commute from Danvers to Canton, Stoughton, Randolph on a daily basis. That took a toll on time and on your physical condition and on your mind. But right now, we do not have the employment opportunities that should be situated and located inside the North Shore belt.
Yeah.
And what we're doing is we're reaching out to make a living someplace an hour away, an hour and a half away. It took me sometimes 2 hours to come home because you had to come through Boston. And it's impossible. But the problem is you're talking about the senior center survey. That survey is geared towards the seniors
Well,
of what they...
it's a Council on Aging.
Council on Aging, and we're both aging, John. So what we need to do is we need to participate in that survey, because that survey is going to be stacked unless we give them a true picture of what is required or what is needed in this town. Housing, transportation, I mean, that's something, we are a bedroom community with some industrial and commercial. We do not have a lot of employment other than the service organizations, the malls, and some engineering companies are here. Was it Biomed or somebody here is making arts, machine shops and everything else. The thing is that transportation is non-existent in this town except for a bus that comes through Danvers Square maybe twice or three times a day. And we pay millions of dollars towards the support of the MBTA. Now, look what happened in Boston. Boston basically finally stood up and said, we're not contributing any more money into the MBTA unless the service is improved and the prices are reduced. Where is this money being spent? Spent on a lot of retirements and a lot of service organizations.
And a lot of the people who run it.
That's right.
This survey, by the way, the copies are available at Town Hall, the People-to-People Food Pantry, the Danvers YMCA, and the Senior Center. So you can pick up a copy and get your opinion over.
You probably can do it on the internet too. But
oh, I'm sorry. It's on the internet too. Yep. Online at https://bit.ly.
Call the Senior Center. It's easier. All right. So, housing strategy. I think we've talked about that. Your concern is that the housing strategy is being dictated to us by the governor and the legislature.
Yes.
Because what they want to do is they want to expand the Boston population into the suburbs. And this is one of the reasons we got the overlay district, because we're being bribed to put in that overlay district, because that will concentrate the number of units in a smaller scale, because a lot of the towns in the North Shore have something like 2-acre lots of land that are required by zoning.
Well, if you look around town, there really isn't that much total open space.
Right.
And that to me is one of the reasons why
available
they came
space.
Up.
Don't say open,
well,
because open is green space.
The available space that they've put the overlay districts into. But think of this. What is going to happen if this goes through and it works? Very simple. Your traffic is going to increase.
Right.
Your parking. You don't have parking now. And can you imagine what's going to happen if you have 400, 500, 700 more housing units in the small areas that they're talking about now, and then they're going to increase that? My God, it's going to be a pain.
Well, all kinds of promises have been made, and none of them have been kept, and we'll see in the future of what happens. So, I have one more story that I want to get across, and this one, I don't know, maybe I'm paranoid about town government and intrusion into your privacy, but notices were sent out about Patriot, the consulting company for the assessments. They're doing an evaluation or reassessment of our properties. Notice was phrased in such that it was a legal requirement for these people to enter your home and inspect. And I'll read from my little notice. In compliance with the Department of Revenue certification regulations, the town of Danvers is conducting FY 2019 cyclical inspection program on homes in your area from 3:15 to 6:30. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Revenue guidelines, again, this is guidelines, requires the interior to be inspected when possible and the exterior of each property. The town, in its assessment program through the town assessor, has every right to go out and measure the outside of your property. Square footage is what is required for the assessment. However, there is a delineation of quality of the interior. The number of bedrooms don't matter. The number of bathrooms, they count. But they have all that information. There's a gradient of quality from poor, fair, good, excellent. So your factor for the interior quality of your finishes is driven by that assessment by the inspector, whoever that may be. It may be a high school kid that comes out and takes a look at your place. And we do not have any requirements to permit anyone from that Patriot organization to go into our home and do an inspection. The assessing department has every right to go on the outside, look and measure and to their heart's content. But inside, it's a privacy issue, and it even says so in here, when possible. So don't get fooled. This is not a legal requirement for an inspection. They're just looking for increasing the quality of the finishes on the inside so they can raise the assessed value of your home.
Your
I will not let them in.
Your tax rate has gone up every year for the past 11 years. Are you happy with that? Do you really believe that is necessary? Now, this is one of the process that they use to justify increasing your taxes.
Right. Because there's a factor, basically, there's a relationship between the assessed valuation and the tax rate. The tax rate goes up, the assessed valuations go down, they still get the same amount of money. The assessed valuation goes up, the tax rate pretty much stays the same as last year, and they still get the same amount of money. So privacy is an issue, and we need to not to spend that away to our government. Okay, John, we have 9 minutes. What I like to do is bring everybody up to date on a couple of small stories.
Yeah.
And I think we've commented on them last time. Is I went and visited and entered the DPW garage for the water and sewer garage that's behind Salem 5 Savings Bank. And I did enter beyond the gate. I thought I was going to get arrested. That's what the town manager wanted to do last time. But there's a small pile that's fenced in. I don't know whether it's contaminated or not, but it's covered and fenced in. So that's appropriate. Now, the ground that all of that contaminated soil was on, has been cleared. The contaminated soil is gone. But now I'm waiting for the next meeting of the Water and Sewer Board to find out how much more is it going to cost now for the DPW to build their office building. Because that office building was already bid and they had numbers for that building. but the town manager decided to dump the dirt onto that area instead of letting them build the office building. So we'll see where the money comes from and who's going to pay for it. Crease and Cook, we're still awaiting for a response. I have tried to get a hold of Mr. Golden, the project manager on that project.
Is that waiting for the state to approve, or?
I think they're putting together a plan with the comments that have been raised during that meeting that we all attended. They also need the funding, which was, I don't know, I think it was almost $20 million after they got through, because there's different sections that have to be done. So they're probably waiting for the funds as well. The third little story, I'll just mention it. We, as a reporting organization, wanted or arranged a meeting to go and tour the water treatment plant with the reservoir and the facilities that are in the area, so our viewers can see what the heck some people don't even know that we have a water treatment plant. It is hidden away behind the fire station of Middleton off of Route 114, and nobody knows it's there. So that's where our water comes from. We made arrangements to visit the site, and we had very good cooperative discussion with the operator of the site. He was very cooperative. But all of a sudden, next day, I get a call, oh, we can't do it. And not from the water treatment plant, but from Town Hall. So where is the transparency of operations of Town Hall facilities? The water and treatment plant is a independent facility that's being run by DPW again. The electric company is being run by the DPW again through the town manager. So there's some obstruction going on here, but we'll continue persevering and we'll get to the bottom of this. We'll get you a report on the water and sewer treatment plant. Water conservation and withdrawal permit actions are ongoing. We said that last week. I have I don't know why am I reading all these newspapers, but I think one of the things that I've noticed, and we have a few minutes, when I spoke to Salem Evening News in regard to the community news participation in the newspapers, I think they're loading this up. Mr. Foreman is writing articles like crazy. I think the visits to the Herald Tribune helped.
Oh.
So we're going to continue that. The water conservation and withdrawal permit actions are ongoing but need to be explored. Increase in water rates was authorized and will continue while restrictions will most likely continue this summer. There was an article on, oh God, when was this? March 23rd. You know who's wagging the tail of this dog? Is a nonprofit organization which is called the Watershed Association for the Ipswich River Withdrawals. And this is a nonprofit organization that is not a government agency, and it is dictating to all the towns in the North Shore of how much water they can take out of the river.
And
the problem is that the state is not coming into. Where is the town in this agreement? This is a private sector organization, nonprofit too, and they're dictating to the town of Danvers and all the surrounding towns of how much water they can take out of it.
Well, the big question is, are we going to have a problem with water?
We've been having a problem with water for the last 20 years, 25 years. The problem is that nobody's coming to the table with a solution except obstruction of withdrawals.
Well, that's what their job is to do, really.
Obstruction is
is
right.
the control.
So hopefully the town, in its wisdom, the DPW director and the water and sewer commissioners will put some pressure on this organization and get them out of our way. So water conservation continues. I have received, or I have acquired, a brochure that everybody should get from the town hall up in the DPW or at the water,
Yes.
if they can get into the water and treatment plant. There's a save water, save money, save water for future generations. This is an incentive program which has always been in place, but very few people know or understand it.
Yes.
You have a rebate for a water saver toilet. Clothes washers, you have a rebate. Faucets, you get a rebate. Shower head, you get a rebate. Irrigation controller, you get a rebate. Rain barrels, I just got a rain barrel last year, and it's up to $100 you can get back from the town because you're saving water for being used. So, what we have today is we have gone through most of our items. We still have some items to go, but
Can I say just one thing?
go for it, John.
Well, I just want to say, read the bloody paper, find out what's going on so that you can get involved. That's it.
Our next show is going to be April 25th, and what we'll be talking about is the final budget and warrant articles, annual election contest, and the details of some warrant articles, which may surprise us all. We'll see. Future stories, we still want to do the water treatment plant
Yes.
and the downtown economic development. So, good night, Danvers.
Take care.